Hi, and this is the Roaring Dog. We're entering Samuel Academy, two of them.
Months of unrelenting pressure by you psychopaths pretending to be my characters on Twitter, I finally got a merch store. Let this be a lesson, kids. With enough harassment, you can achieve anything. Anyway, go check it out, or don't, whatever. Hey kids, if I learned anything from my middle school career, it's that what may seem like a good idea initially will often be remembered only as a foolish mistake. Here's a few pieces of technology from yesteryear that have since fallen into total obscurity. So I've always believed that there's no point in having many small things when you can have one big thing. Why have many shrimp when you can have one lobster? Why drink many glasses of milk when you can eat one udder? Why have many cheese-its when you can have one cheese-them? Patent pending. And why have many street lights when you can have one moonlight tower? These guys were real popular back in the 1880s and 90s, often standing at over 150 feet tall and illuminating several blocks from a single point. Not very well, mind you. Matter of fact, they were so dim, we didn't even have the conscience to just call them light towers. Had to go and stick the moon on the front so people didn't get their hopes up. But thanks to our good old friend the inverse square law, you still needed a fuck ton of light to pull this off. So they used incredibly harsh and UV emitting arc lights instead of incandescent bulbs. All the light of the moon and all the vision damage of the sun? Talk about a win-win. Sadly, these beasts have fallen by the wayside over the past century or so, except for in Austin, apparently, but they use friendlier mercury vapor lamps in them, so they only get half points. Now, anyone who's been around a baby long enough knows they always have a cloud of ghoulish stench hovering around them. Jeez Louise, somebody better air out that musty little muskrat before grandma starts drooping again. You could stick him on the clothesline for a while, but knowing that little moron, I'm sure he'd find a way to hurt himself somehow. Introducing the baby cage. Finally, city dwellers all across the nation have a way of unleashing their postnatal funk on the unsuspecting passerby below. These were in vogue for a while before falling out of style a bit of the way into the 20th century, because apparently society started deeming babies more valuable than air conditioners. I don't really get it personally, but this is also around the time we started putting lead in gasoline, so it's probably for the best we kept them inside all day. Matter of fact, it's my firm belief that without kids growing up breathing lead, there's no way pet rocks would have taken off in the 70s. Wow, alienating baby boomers. He's so brave and controversial. Now, in the days between the Great War and the not as great but still pretty alright war, people were trying to find efficient means of detecting an incoming air attack. They climbed their nation's tallest mountains to seek the wisdom of their greatest elders, and the wise men said, big ears. So that's what they did. These giant discs were known as acoustic mirrors and were designed to focus incoming sound over a 5-meter diameter into a single point. They were reasonably effective as listening devices. A few of them in Britain were able to pick up the sound of a plane from all the way across the English Channel. Of course, radar came along soon after, rendering these things completely useless beyond looking brutalist as hell. For real, instant album cover material right here. Ah! One of the Pep Boys is pulling a Spanish Inquisition on this poor wayward harlot. Huh. Just kidding. Despite the fact that this looks so very much like a state-of-the-art instrument of torture, it's actually just a beauty micrometer. Think those shoe size measurer things at Foot Locker, only instead of one primitive measurement, it records the entire topology of your face and skull at once. With this data, a trained cosmetologist would be able to pinpoint exactly what features of your head should be enhanced and reduced with makeup in order to achieve a maximum calculated attractiveness after you've paid for their services. Clearly this device must have been effective. After all, beauty is entirely objective. What, eye of the beholder? Check the name tag, buddy. Apparently, though, women didn't like being strapped into a birdcage and having their every minute flaw meticulously laid out in front of them, so this thing never really took off in the end. Next, we have the Humlauf. This was a device made during World War II designed to let infantry shoot around corners. It's like the Germans sat down and watched that part in Tom and Jerry where the conniving rat bends the gun barrel back at his adversary. They said, Mein Gott. They came in a variety of angles between 30 and 90 degrees, and even came with a little periscope so you could see what you were shooting at. But as we all come to find out when we reach adolescence, cartoons are the arbiters of deceit, because these things would invariably break within the first couple hundred shots or so. And even when they did work, the rounds would fucking explode from the massive acceleration, turning a deadly bullet into an ineffectual spray of shrapnel. These were so ineffective that only the 30-degree model ever saw significant production beyond prototypes, and even that was very limited. Say, you ever look at regular mousetraps and go, not enough property damage? Well, check this out. Patented in 1882, it's the revolver mouse.
What the fuck is that? Why do you need a gun to kill a single rat?
Mousetrap, brought to you by the makers of the Snail Trebuchet and the Cockroach Claymore. Thanks to the marvels of the modern era, all those tiresome hours of intense varmint slang can be outsourced to one little gadget on the floor of your kid's playroom. Now when you hear a gunshot in the middle of the night, you can rest easy knowing that, one way or the other, there's one less pest for you to deal with in the morning. Boom. 1850. Steam locomotives are all the rage. You're in the transport business, but all you can afford is a couple dumb horses. Sure, they move things from point A to point B almost as well at a fraction of the cost, but your cool rail riding friends called you a whack-ass and it really hurt your feelers. Well, have we got the invention for you? The Impulsoria uses an ingenious system of treadmills to turn that horse to be beckoned into a force to be reckoned with. Sure, it's expensive as hell to make and limits your services entirely to railroads, but just look at it. Instant Pussymobile. Slap some rims and a spoiler on that, you're laughing. This machine is recorded at having a maximum output of 2 to 4 horsepower, which sounds about right, and it didn't see much use outside a couple exhibitions. Now, if there's one hobby that people in the past enjoyed, it's smoking. Whoo boy did they like smoking. And with every great wholesome activity comes a million novelty items to go along with it. Everyone's seen the long cigarette, but how about the really long cigarette? Want to smoke in the rain? Here you go. Going snorkeling? Hey, you know what's more important than oxygen? Nicotine. But hey, wanna know the only thing better than a cigarette? 2 cigarettes. You know what? Fuck it. Have the whole pack. You earned it. Of course, if you're trying to cut back, you can always share it with a friend. Aw, how heartburning. But you know what's even more fun than addiction? High quality documentaries. That's why you should check out Curiosity.
Mm-mm.
As you can imagine, medieval castles were not easy to break into. I would argue that the medieval era saw just as much genius as any other period in time. It's just most of that genius went towards finding new and creative ways to brutally slaughter those you disagree with. Here's a few highlights. First, we'll talk about the werewolf. So, as you can imagine, medieval castles were not easy to break into. They were basically like those jungle gym things at Chuck E. Cheese's. Massive in size, intentionally confusing layout, security everywhere, and by the end of your visit, you'd probably end up with some kind of disease. So in order to help penetrate fortresses, medieval armies would often utilize siege weapons, one of the most popular of which was the trebuchet. Now this device is interesting enough on its own, but it gets better. So around 1300 AD, King Edward I of England was in the process of invading Scotland. However, one fortress known as Stirling Castle was giving him a lot of trouble. He laid siege to the building for many months without any real progress. Then one day he woke up and had a revelation. Hey guys, listen, why are we wasting our time building all these regular sized trebuchets when we could just build one giant one and call it a day? So that's what he did. This gargantuan war machine was known as the Werewolf and stood at around 6 stories tall. To give a bit of perspective, this is about as tall as King Kong was in his largest film depiction. So basically, picture a giant fucking ape launching boulders like they're baseballs, and you've got a pretty good idea of what the Werewolf was capable of. It was so intimidating that when the Scots saw the English constructing the beast outside the castle, they immediately surrendered out of fear. But then Edward was like, ha, fuck that, I'm gonna test this bad boy out, and proceeded to take pot shots on the castle anyway. Another devious product of the Middle Ages was a flammable substance known as Greek fire. Contrary to popular belief, Greek fire was not invented by the ancient Greeks. Rick Riordan, you lying prick. It was actually invented in the 7th century AD by the Byzantines, who happened to inhabit Greece at the time. Historians still don't know exactly what it was made of, but they do know that it acted a lot like napalm, sticking to ships, sticking to people, even floating and continuing to burn on the surface of the water. The Byzantines also had these siphon-like tubes that they'd put on the front of their boats to pour Greek fire on the enemy, kinda like makeshift flamethrowers. These were retired pretty quickly though, mostly because when you put the words makeshift and flamethrower next to each other, you're bound to run into some problems eventually. Our next bright idea comes from a woman known as Olga of Kiev. So Olga was a princess who ruled the area around the capital of modern-day Ukraine from 945 to 963 AD. And she had quite a track record for being just a total badass. For example, the Drevlians, a tribe of people under Kiev's control, once sent 20 men to Kiev in order to convince Olga to marry their prince, under the pretense that if they did marry, the prince could claim her rule over Kiev. In response, she had all 20 of them buried alive. She then sent a letter to the prince saying she accepted his proposal, but she would need a bunch of his most distinguished governors to escort her on the journey. Once the men showed up, Olga was like, "Hey guys, long journey, huh? How'd you like to take a bath in this here bathhouse?" They were like, "Yeah, sure, that sounds great." "Okay, have fun, you guys." Man, it's like a sauna in here. It is a sauna, dipshit. You have a point. So long story short, this lady just did not give a heck. My favorite story about her starts with her besieging a Drevlian city that refused to pay tribute to her. The people in the city were already well aware of the type of rampaging that Olga was capable of, so they were already scared shitless. But when she showed up, she was like, alright, you know what guys, I'm gonna play nice. Just bring me 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows from each household and I'll be on my way. Okay. What are they for exactly? We're just hungry. I mean, we got some food too. We could just give. I'm sorry, did I fucking stutter? Alright, birds it is. Then, once the creatures were in Olga's hands, she had each of her soldiers tie a cloth-bound piece of sulfur to one of the birds' feet, which was then set alight. The birds were then released all at once, and when they flew back into the city, their nests acted like little piles of tinder, resulting in nearly every house in the entire city erupting in flames simultaneously. And while the whole place burned to the ground, Olga just sat and watched. By the way, it's worth mentioning that, after her death, Olga was canonized as a Catholic saint, presumably around the same time as Saint Tiffany, who went around pushing in the soft spots of babies, and Saint Jerry the Goat Fucker, who, as the name implies, fucked a lot of goats. In conclusion, pay your taxes. To my loyal subscribers, I'll see you in 3 months. I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching.
Well, that was something. Bye. Please like and subscribe.